Okay, so Yachimo, Yedase, and greetings. Yedase, everybody. Thank you for joining in once again. So we're doing sort of a series dealing with Susuw. Of course, Susuw is the Akan term for meditation, been used for thousands of years. And as we've shown in the past couple of broadcasts that we've done, Susuw can be found in the language of ancient Canadian Kemet, dealing with measurement as well. So as you can see, we're utilizing the term Susuw because this is a term that we've used in the Akan language. The Akan people of Ghana and Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, in West Afuraka, Afuraitkait, West Africa. There are over 26 plus million Akan people between Ghana and Ivory Coast, one of the largest ethnic groups on the continent, one of the largest ethnic groups from whom we were stolen and brought into the Western Hemisphere in North America, Central America, South America, the Caribbean, as well as Europe during the Musuo Kessie, the great perversity, which we call the enslavement era. And many of us are Akan descendants. But we utilize the language on one hand because, that's our ancestry, but also we can show it's not just an Akan term. So when you look at the term Susuw on the right, you see this is from the Akan dictionary of the tree language of the Akan people. And what does the definition say? Susuw, to measure, especially by the application of a staff or similar instrument of certain length, to sound, to search or measure the depth of, to calculate the capacity of, to think, imagine, suppose, presume, to think on, reflect upon, to consider, to meditate. So, but first and foremost, to measure. When you're measuring something, you're calculating the capacity of something, you're measuring the depth of something, and so forth. And then when you look on the left side, this is from the Medut Ntoro dictionary, meaning the hieroglyphic dictionary. The term Medut in Akan or in ancient Canadian Kemet means words, and Ntoro means divinity or divine and so forth. So the Medut Ntoro are the words divine or the divine symbols and so forth. That's the quote unquote hieroglyphs. Hieroglyphs is a Greek term. But you see that the root term su, a measure of length, it is simply reduplicated as Susuw in Akan, and that reduplication is a feature in various Afuraitkait languages. We tend to double things to put in specific emphasis on a certain definition or quality or attribute and so forth. With su, a measure of length, Susuw, to measure. And in this context, Susuho is to measure Susuw, the ehun, the self, that is to reflect upon the self, to measure the self, to calculate the capacity of the self, to measure the depth of the self, the nature of your spiritual anatomy and so forth, reflect on your spiritual anatomy to make sure your thoughts, intentions, and actions are in harmony with divine order. And if you find yourself out of harmony with divine order and creating disorder in your life, you measure the depth of your spirit, you calculate the capacity of your thoughts, intentions, and actions, place them against the standard of divine order. If they don't measure up, then you make changes so you can realign yourself with order so your life can get back on track with divine order. So su or Susuw, to measure, su in ancient Canadian Kemet, to measure. Then, of course, we went to the term meditate, to ponder, think abstractly, engage in mental contemplation, to meditate, think over, reflect, consider. And of course, from the Proto-Indo-European root med, meaning to take appropriate measures. So even the definition of meditation, the root is med, to take appropriate measures. But the Proto-Indo-European, PIE is, short for Proto-Indo-European language family. And they posit that language family to be the origin of all the Indo-European languages. So European languages going from Europe into, the Near East and so forth, and into Western Asia and so forth, India, thousands of years ago. But that Proto-Indo-European root, med, meaning to measure, is stolen from our ancestral language that predates the Proto-Indo-European language following by thousands of years, as proven in the Medut Ntoro. And as you can see here, med in Proto-Indo-European is a corruption of meh in ancient Kemet. And meh in ancient Kemet means cubit. It is the central unit of measurement in the culture of Kemet. Just like we have inches and yards and feet and so forth, and that's the central, units of measurement in order to build roads and bridges and, buildings and everything else. Everything is based on these units of measurement. Meh, the cubit, the central unit of measurement in ancient Khanid Kemet, is corrupted into med, which means the appropriate measure or to take appropriate measure. So whether you're using the term med, the root of meditate, talking about take measure, meh in ancient Kemet to take measure, you see meh Susuw here, the royal meh, the royal measure and so forth. Even the word measure and so forth comes from meh in ancient Khanid Kemet and so forth. But meditation is a ritual practice. Susuw is to engage in a form of measurement. And as we talked about before, you engage in meditation on a regular basis. We said the most dramatic form of measuring yourself or taking measure and so forth is when you go to sleep. You tune everything else out and you go internally. You're not focused externally. You're focused internally. And what you're doing is measuring and you're rejuvenating and reconstituting yourself, refueling yourself and so forth. So when you arise in the morning, you can move forward and execute your functions in the world. When you sit down and even stare at a screen or watch television or read a book, you're blocking everything else out and you're focusing on, you're contemplating upon, you're pondering upon, you're reflecting upon what you're looking at, and you're trying to gain some information from that. Gain some, wisdom, hopefully, from what you're doing. So we're constantly engaged in forms of pondering, reflecting, and so forth. We're engaged in forms of meditation. It is intelligent for us to take these forms of meditation that we engage in ever since we were children, sleeping, or, just engaging in life. Take that ritual practice and utilize it to our best benefit to optimize our lives. So as you can see, our upcoming course, Susuw, the Meditation Instructor Certification. You can become certified as a meditation instructor. You use that certification to contract with cultural organizations or schools or agencies or, places of employment or, events and so forth. People pay you, $100 or $200 to do a meditation session. Or if you came in once a week for a few weeks at a school or once a week for a few weeks at a place of business or a social services agency, drug rehab, group or, group therapy session. There are many organizations, groups, places of business who are, bringing people in for periodic, stints of meditation. Whether it's one time, they just bring you in for one day, a special seminar and so forth, or they bring you in a few weeks in a row, youth as well as adults. And this comes from our experience of not only engaging in Susuw for 30 years, but for the past 20 years, teaching Susuw, and we utilize our book Nkwamua Whole Life Journal and so forth as part of that process. So we want to get into some cosmology tonight to further our knowledge in a holistic way, grounded in our culture about what meditation is. This is why one of the reasons we use the ancient term Susuw is because when you hear the word meditation, everything you've ever heard about the term, all the misinformation associated with the term, floods your sphere of awareness. But when you hear a term like Susuw for the first time, the only definition associated with that term is what you've been given, that you've studied and you've gathered that proper information. So now you understand taking measure, taking stock, calculating the depth of something, the capacity of something, measuring the depth, pondering, reflecting upon, and so forth. So it's part of an everyday practice, but it's also part of a ritual practice. So just like someone can dance, they can hear some music and start dancing, but people can also use dance in a ritual context in ancestral religion, Afuraitkait, or African ancestral religion, whether it's on the continent of Afuraka, Afuraitkait, Africa, or if it's in North America in the Hoodoo tradition, or the Juju tradition, or the Voodoo tradition, and so forth. You can sing, just sing songs and so forth, just in a regular secular way, or you can use song in a ritual context to invoke the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the forces of nature, evoke the Nsamanfo, Egungun, Kuvito, the ancestors as an ancestor who are spiritually cultivated. You can engage in meditation in a secular context to reflect upon the self, retrace things that you've gone through throughout the course of the day, a number of different things. Or you can also use meditation in a ritual context. So they can be done in both ways. You can engage in all kinds of activities in a secular context, but also in a ritual context. When we go into schools and, different organizations, and you go into places of employment and so forth, you're more so focused on the general expression of meditation in the general context, the secular context, but it can graduate into the ritual context when people engage in that and they start learning more about it. But from the beginning, when you're just introducing it to the average person, youth or adult, it's in a secular context, just like exercise or dance or song and so forth. Now, so we want to talk about this effectuating male and female sacred balance. So we're showing this image of Mary Ra and Ani Wia, and this is a married couple and so forth. And the reason why we showed this for talking about effectuating sacred balance and meditation in the context, Susuw, in the context of effectuating sacred balance. First, we're going to show them just on a basic level the balance of male and female, complementary balance in ancient Kanini Kemet, and then we'll get into some cosmology. So, Mary, Ra, Ani, Wia. They talk about, the sculpture itself, steward of the temple of the Aten, which is the sun. The male sun divinity is Aten, the female is Atenit. Scribe of the temple of Aten in Akhenaten and in Mennefer. So this is some of his titles. So he was a high priest of the Aten, high priest of the temple of Neet, one of the greatest seers, meaning clairvoyant and so forth, of the Aten, high priest of the temple of Neet. Inscriptions in his tomb make clear that he changed his name from Meri Neet, which means beloved of the divinity Neet, to Meri Ra, which means beloved of Ra, and so forth, in order to adjust to the prevailing political climate. So, and that's another image of them. And the reason why we wanted to show that is because you'll see throughout ancient Kanit and Kemet, you will see the balance of male and female, the complementary balance of male and female. That's central to our spiritual balance. Physical balance, cultural balance, spiritual balance. It all streams from the foundational balance in creation, which is the great mother and great father, supreme being. Let me show you an image of that as well. So what you see here on our page, on our Kamfo Nanasom, this is the male divinity Amen, also called Amen Ra. This is the female divinity Amenet, also called Amenet Ra'et. That is the great father and great mother, whom together comprise the supreme being. They are complementary opposites, two halves of a divine whole. There was never a time when there was just Amen, the great God, without Amenet. There was never a time when there was just Amenet, the great goddess, without Amen. Amen and Amenet are two halves of the great whole, which we call the supreme being. They have names in our various cultures. In Akan, Nyame is the name of the great God. Nyame, the Akan people of Ghana and Ivory Coast, Nyame is God. Nyamewa is goddess. In Yoruba, Amen is called Olorun, who's the great divinity and so forth. The great mother is called Olokun, even though sometimes they will talk about Olokun being the ocean and so forth. If you look at the old cosmology in Yoruba tradition, they will talk about Olorun and Olokun being the two great divinities at the beginning of creation, the great father and the great mother before anything else was created. In the Senufo tradition, you have Kolotiolo is the great father, Katieleo is the great mother. In Vodun, amongst the Ewe people, you have Lisa or Ulisa is the great father, Mawu is the great mother. And when they refer to the supreme being, they very often just say Mawu Lisa, mother, father. Mawu, mother, Lisa, father. In Igbo, southeastern Nigeria, Chukwu is the great father, Komosu is the great mother. So we've always had the balance of male and female, the foundational balance that undergirds all of creation, streams from Amen and Amenet, and this is why you need complementary balance throughout all of creation. Now, so let us get into this. How do we affect balance through meditation? We talked about Susuw, talking about measuring the depth of something, calculating the capacity of something. Now let's get into something that most people are unaware of. Okay, so what you see right here is our page. We have a yearly retreat in February to Edisto Island, South Carolina, one of the Gullah Islands along the Gullah Geechee corridor and so forth. And it's called the Hapi Merit Retreat. It's dealing with nation building and restoration and so forth. But it's called Hapi and Merit because we're talking about the male and female divinities, the spiritual forces of nature that animate the Nayar, which is called the Nile River. The male divinity of the Nile River, the male masculine force animating that body of water is Hapi, and this is Hapi. The female divinity animating that body of water is Merit, and this is Merit. So I'm going to give you some information that we share when we're at that retreat on a yearly basis so we can get into some real cosmology. So here we have Hapi, the male force. So if you go into the Nile River, stand inside the Nile River, the spiritual force animating that river, the expansive force is Hapi. The contractive force is Merit, and these are male and female forces. They have their own different names in the various cultures. Every culture, Afurakani, Afuraitkait, or African Black culture, whether on the continent or in the Western Hemisphere, in our own languages, we have names for these forces in nature. So, Hapi and Merit. And they deal with the abundance of the area and so forth, the flooding of the river that brings abundance once the crops are planted and so forth. You will find that Hapi and Merit, etymologically, is the origin of the English terms happy and merry, like making merry, fun, merriment, and so forth. Also, the origin of the term married, to become married, to be bound, and so forth, and matrimony and all of that. Happy, to be happy or happy. Merit, to be merry or to make merry. As also to marry and so forth, because when the floodwaters came, overran the country, and the floodwaters receded, and the black silt was deposited on the banks of the river and so forth, that meant abundance for the entire nation. And once the harvest time came, people were happy. They were invoking the divinity happy. There was joyousness and so forth. Merit, she's the harvesting divinity and so forth. There's merriment, all of that. Now, so you see here, it rarely ever rains in ancient Kemet. You'll see that there's, a fertile valley, and then the desert is right on the side and so forth. So it's a very stark contrast. You're riding along the road and so forth, or sailing down the river. You see it's very, fertile, but then immediately there's miles and miles of desert on both sides, east and west. But the waters flood the floodplain and so forth, and cover a large portion of the country for miles and miles for a number of months. And then the waters begin to recede. And once the waters recede, as we said, black silt has been deposited on the banks of the river. So the water brings that black silt and dumps it on the river, on the banks of the river. And when the waters recede, then you have all this, fertile black silt, black soil, and then people can plant their crops. That flood happens every year. So when Hapi comes and floods the country, people are excited because they know that in a few months, there's going to be black silt deposited all along the banks when the waters recede because it doesn't rain. So they're dependent on the flood of the river. When the black silt is there, they go out and plant their crops, and then everything is abundance. This is a portion of the flood, the image of the flooding. This middle image, you see the land is flooded and so forth. And then it becomes lush and fertile and everything else. What you see here, and the Nile crocodile, the divinity Sobek and so forth. This is a crocodile, as you can see. They engage in a form of hibernation called estivation. So they go into the Nile mud and so forth, and they stay there for a number of, weeks and so forth. Just like bears hibernate for the winter, their body temperature lowers and so forth, and they kind of go into a stupor, so to speak, sleep, and then they re-emerge. The crocodile does the same thing. Goes into estivation, goes into a little sleep or stupor for a while, and then re-emerges. The river does the same thing. Goes into hibernation, and then it re-emerges. When we go to sleep at night, we go into hibernation. Our body is, rejuvenating itself. It's a dramatic form of meditation, as we said earlier. And then we come out of that rejuvenating period, and we're ready to function in the world. When we go into the spirit realm, when we meditate, engage in ritual process, we stop focusing on the external world. We go internally. We commune with the spirit forces in creation, the ancestral spirits. We come out of that spirit possession or spirit communication with, emboldened with wisdom, so we can move forward and correct things in our lives that are out of harmony with order and so forth. Now, so we talk a little bit about that. But here's a couple of things that are important. Merit. And in fact, let me show you something real quick. Show you another, that's an image of Merit as well, but I want to show you a different image real quick. So this is Merit, and this is from the Valley of the Kings when I was in Kemet a couple of years ago. Took this picture on my iPhone. That's another nice, clear image. The Valley of the Kings, their tombs are underground in the West Bank and so forth. In Kemet, this is one of those images. I also want to show you, when we're talking about the Nayar, so-called Nile River, just want to show you one of the images that we have, videos that we have. So one of the things we do when we take the trip to Kemet, we have a Nile cruise. So you can see on both sides is very lush, but right outside of that lush area is desert that stretches for miles and miles and miles. So it's a stark contrast between the two. But being in the river, you step into the river and so forth, the spiritual force, expansive of Hapi and contracted of Meri, is palpable in the river. So when Black people go to the river, we can invoke these forces in creation of forces in the white Snarl Spring, whether the white Arabs or white Hindus, white Europeans. The divinities don't deal with them, of course. So you need to understand that there's a dual manifestation of these forces in creation. So now that you saw, when you look at Merit, and it says Merti, the two goddesses of the inundation, the southern and northern, you see them standing side by side. There are twin divinities. There's Merit of the north, Merit Met, Merit of the south, Merit Shema. In the same fashion, you have Hapi, who's a twin divinity, twin brother divinity, and so forth. Hapi Reset, Hapi of the south, Hapi Met, Hapi of the north. So when you look at their names and what their functions are, you get a better understanding. So you can see Mert there. A band, bandage, girdle, fillet, and so forth. Bundles of clothes, a festival, gladness. So Mer, it means that band, that girdle, that thing that ties things together, pulls things together. Mer also means a festival. Mer is also the term for love or desire and so forth. Mer or Mert is gladness. And of course, as we said earlier, Merit, when you see her with her vessel and so forth, her basket, she's the one that brings the harvest of the fruits of the labor and so forth. And when she brings the harvest, and it's harvest time, and there's a festival of the harvest and so forth, and people are glad and they're making merry, they're invoking Merit or making merry, because Merit means gladness. This is why to be merry, M-E-R-R-Y in English, to make merry or merriment means happiness or gladness. That comes from the goddess Merit, who's the goddess of the harvest. When she brings the harvest, everybody is happy because they know they're going to have abundance for the rest of the year. So everybody is manifesting gladness. Merit is a festival, the festival of the harvest, joy, gladness. Mer pulls things together, binds things together. This is why when you talk about being married in the bonds of marriage, matrimony and so forth, that's a bonding that we're talking about. Then you look at Hop. So it's the general title of the river and so forth, the name of the divinity himself, but hop or hep, to move slowly, to slink along, to advance cautiously, to advance, to travel, to go about, and so forth, to advance, to progress. And you said advanced progress, just like the river moving slowly. But you also see hop right here. You see the two arms like this, to embrace, to hug, to take the breast and so forth. So when the river is moving through and advancing and so forth, it's pulling things together. It's pulling the black silt. It's depositing it upon the banks of the river. It's pulling things together. There's an embrace and so forth. Everything that's needed for the community is, being drawn by the river and moving through the country and so forth. So merit, to bond, to bind together, to tie together. Hop, to embrace, to hug, to fuse, to unite together and so forth. The spiritual forces animating not just the river on earth, bringing abundance to all of the citizens on the, in the country. They're totally dependent on the movement of the river. Physiologically, the shrine of Hapi and Merit in our bodies as Afurakani, Afuraitkait people. That's what's important. And of course, the shrines of Hapi and Merit are the arteries and the veins. The arteries are the shrines of Hapi, Hapi of the north. You have the arteries above the heart and the arteries below the heart. You have Hapi of the north and Hapi of the south. You have the veins that are above the heart and below the heart. Merit of the north and Merit of the south. The arteries send the blood throughout the body. The veins capture the blood and bring the blood back to the heart. So the oxygenated blood is being sent through the circulatory system to go to all the cells and so forth, but also captures and brings oxygen to the cells and nutrients and all of that. Then the veins captures that blood that's deoxygenated, brings it back to the heart. It also purifies and so forth, also takes away the toxins, but brings that blood back to the heart. Like Merit with her basket with the harvest, carrying things back to the source. Then it gets into the heart-lung complex. The heart, along with the lungs and oxygen, purifies the blood, becomes oxygenated again, and then that oxygenated blood is sent back out through the left side of the heart, goes through the circulatory system, and returns to the right side of the heart. It becomes purified once again, oxygenated once again, and sent back out through the left side of the heart. So that circular system, arteries and veins, Hapi and Merit, and every cell in the body is dependent upon Hapi and Merit. Every cell in the body, every organ in the body, every gland in the body is dependent upon the functioning of Hapi and Merit. Just like every citizen in the country of Kemet is dependent on the functioning of Hapi and Merit operant within the river and so forth, and the flooding of the river and the abundance that comes from that. In your physical body, you are dependent upon the movement and the proper functioning of the arteries and veins, and the spiritual force that animates the arteries and veins is Hapi and Merit. In your spirit body, you have a river of energy, channels of energy that mirror and mimic those same spaces within the physical body, and your life force energy surges and circulates through your body in that same structure and is governed by Hapi and Merit. So just like the arteries and veins send the blood throughout the body constantly, and your physical body is dependent on that, in your spirit body, the energy of Ra and Ra'et, the divine living energy in creation, the creator and creatress, that fire, solar energy, when you take a deep breath and you pull in air, oxygen, but fire energy, and it gets into your system, it is circulated through your energy system. Your life force energy is circulated by the rivers of energy of Hapi and Merit in the body. And your entire spirit body is filled up with that energy because it's dependent on the movement of Hapi and Merit within the body. So we show here the river on Earth, a satellite image of the river on Earth and so forth. And then you have the river of stars in the sky called Hap-Ur, or the Great Hap, the heavenly Nile and so forth. There's a correlation as above, so below and so forth. But with regard to us, the river on Earth, the river of blood in the body, and the river of energy moving throughout the spirit body. When you sit down and engage in meditation and you expand that energy moving throughout your system as you're breathing in and out and so forth, and stimulating your life force energy, you're also engaged in the invocation as an Afurakani, Afuraitkait person, African Black person only, of course. You're engaged in the invocation of Hapi, Hapi Met, Hapi Reset, Hapi of the North, Hapi of the South, as well as Merit of the North, Merit Met, Merit Shema, Merit of the South. And when you engage them in a harmonious way, your entire spirit body is filled up with that solar fire energy that is purificatory, it's energizing, but it's purificatory as well. And so here we were showing simply the differences between the arteries and veins above the heart and below the heart, and the relationship between Hapi and Merit. So that's just the biological aspect of it. Now, you also have this definition of Hap as well. Hap or Hep, spelled different ways. Dialectical variants. Hap, plural, Hapu or Hepu. Inspector of laws, establisher of laws, laws laid down by the learned, good law, justice. Hap, to bind, to regulate. Law and order of regulation, restriction, custom, page of a book, and so forth. Law, laws, regulations, edicts, restrictions, and so forth. Things that bind. We're not talking about binding in the sense of slavery, but things that bind us together. When you talk about your nervous system, it binds the functions of the various organs and glands together. When you look at your voluntary musculature, it holds everything in place and binds things together and hugs or embraces and holds everything together. It's not binding in the context of slavery or oppression, but a natural binding. Hop, when we talk about laws, restrictions, regulations and so forth, the natural laws that govern all things in creation, those are the things that bind us together. When we adhere to natural law, then we function in our most optimum state. When we go against natural law, then we have a problem. You can look at fish, they need oxygen. Fish, of course, also need water to survive. We need oxygen. We need also water to survive. If we make a foolish observation like, well, fish are animals and they need water and oxygen. We are animals, which is not accurate. There's a difference between humans and animals and so forth. But if we say, well, we're animals and we need water and oxygen as well, well, I don't want to put myself in any kind of box of some agreed upon identity. I'm just a living being, just like a fish is a living being. And if I want to identify as a fish, as a living being, I can identify as a fish. And then you can jump in the water and try to breathe underwater. And of course, you'll die of suffocation. You'll drown and so forth. Because of the stupidity of trying to operate outside of the law that governs creation. The laws that govern creation, the regulations and so forth, are an expression of divine order. When we align ourselves with divine order, our thoughts, intentions, and actions, then we have an abundant and, resourceful life. When we go outside of those laws, restrictions, regulations, the hapu and so forth, step outside of the functioning of hap, met, and hapraset, hapi, met, and hapraset, and so forth, we have problems. Then we engage the ritual process to get ourselves back on track. When we invoke hapi and merit, hapi and merit, even pouring libation, engaging in ritual prayer or meditation, visualizing them and communicating with them and so forth, and we invoke them by name, hapi and merit, just by saying their names, the sound vibrations that comprise their names, hapi and merit, taken into ritual, it stimulates their shrines in our bodies. It stimulates the nervous system, but not just the nervous system, the energy system, but also the circulatory system, the arteries and the veins and their energy within that system. And if we were discordant and out of order and so forth, by invoking them by name, we start bringing order back to not just the arteries and veins physically, but also the energy centers moving through the arteries and veins as well. And we start to realign ourselves with these regulations that govern every aspect of existence. Once again, these two divinities are central because just like all of the organs and glands are dependent on the circulatory system, all of the spiritual organs and glands in our spirit body that are shrines for other divinities, they are, dependent on the movement of the energy of hapi and merit. So when we align with them, we manifest happiness or merit-ness, happiness or merriment and so forth. That's the fusion of balanced male and female energy. We can effectuate complementary balance and so forth. When we invoke hapi and merit, that also has to do with our relationships with our significant others. Balanced Afuraitkait men, Afuraitkait women, of course. We don't go outside of our race, of course, because that's self-destructive and a manifestation of self-hatred. 100% of the time, we only can balance one another out. But when we invoke hapi and merit consistently, we hope to bond ourselves with our complementary, balanced opposite as well. Now, okay, so before we go any further, any questions on any of that information? Okay, there's a question in the chat room. Let me see. Do you think the lack of structure in the way our people, quote unquote, date each other has had an effect on people being able to form balanced relationships? What is our ancestral and cultural dating practices? So, yes, and you probably, just by seeing this aspect of the presentation, you can see there's a difference. Even starting out within our culture, we start off from the beginning when you're raised or you re-embrace your ancestral culture, and every day when you get up and when you engage in Susuw, meditation for however long it is, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, after purifying yourself, cleansing yourself internally and externally, and you engage in a form of Susuw or meditation, and the first thing you do is invoke the Great Mother and Great Father, you're already invoking the balance of creation. You're already centering yourself in complementary balance. Let me show you one else. So I'm in a nominated of the Great Mother, Great Father, Supreme Being. And this book is called Inyokunton, Ra, and Ra'et. And the purpose of the book was to show that Ra, who is here, the creator of the universe, Ra'et, the creatress of the universe. In the Akan language, Ra is called Nkwamua, that is his title in Akan. right? It's called Nkwamua. And every group has a title for them. In Vodun, and let's just show in Vodun real quick in the book. We talk about the rainbow around the sun and moon and the rainbow serpent and so forth, and the serpent swallowing its tail. In the Vodou tradition, you see that. So Ra is called Da in Vodun, the rainbow serpent that encircles the sun and so forth and swallows its tail. Ra'ed is called Aidahuedo. So Da and Aidahuedo is Ra and Ra'ed. That is in Nkwamua and in Nkwamua. This is why Nkwamua is a basic term for the rainbow in Akan. But in Nkwamua means the circular serpent. In Nkwamua means the arched serpent and so forth. In Akan, that's a sacred animal totem for Ra and Ra, the creator and creatress. They're the divine living energy, life force energy, permeating all of creation, the solar fire, animate force in all of creation. So just like your physical body is a great being, you as an Afurakani man is an emanation of the great being, Amen. An Afuraitkait woman, you as an Afuraitkait woman, you're an emanation of the great mother divinity, Amenet. So you're like Amen and Amenet, the male and female Afurakani man, Afuraitkait woman. Your body's like the great being. But the life force energy circulating through your body as a man, that is your Ra force, your solar force, life force energy. As the Afuraitkait woman, that is your Ra'et force, your life force energy. So Amen, the great being, directs the life force energy Ra to go out and create. Amenet, the great mother, supreme being, feminine aspect of the supreme being, directs her life force energy Ra'et to go out and create. So Amen and Amenet, the great being, direct Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, to go out and create. So Amen and Amenet, the supreme being, are superior to Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress. There's always been a distinction between the supreme being and the creator and creatress. Your great body and the life force energy within your body, you're the great being, that is your life force energy. Your Amen, your Amenet, your life force energy is Ra and Ra'et, the great being and the creator and creatress. So, and every group has a name for them. Now, when you're engaged in ritual practice and you're invoking Amen and Amenet, the first thing you do when you invoke Inyamewa and Inyame in Akan, or Olokun, Olorun in Yoruba, or Mawu and Lisa in Vodun and so forth, you're already invoking and aligning your spirit with the balance of all of creation. When you invoke Ra and Ra in Nkwamua and Nkwamua, or Da and Aidahuedo, or Odumare and Oshumare in Yoruba, which is the same as Da and Aidahuedo and so forth, you're invoking the divine living energy of creation in its balanced manifestation. When you invoke Hapi and Merit, Ptah and Sekhmet, the various balanced divinities, Kunwimu and Heket and so forth, when you Asar and Aset, Set and Nebet Geb and Nut, Shu and Tefnut, Atem and Asase Nebet Tepet, Kepra and Kepri, there's always a balance of male and female. So just by virtue of the fact that you engage in ritual practice, you're already aligning yourself in that fashion. And it permeates every aspect of the culture. So then when we come in contact with one another as Afurakani men and Afuraitkait women, we're already grounded in a sense of balance from the beginning. When we have specific names that are associated with the divinity that governs our head, and we respect our patriclan divinity and matriclan divinity, just like you have a sperm cell that was contributed by your father, the ovum cell that was contributed by your mother, there's genetic material from the father, the Y chromosomal material, the mitochondrial DNA that came from the mother, and they combine to make a unique body, which is you. In our culture, the spiritual force that animated the sperm cell is the Abosom or patriclan deity that has certain attributes, a certain energy complex. The spiritual force that animated the ovum cell is the female matriclan divinity we call the Abusia Bosom. And just like you have genetic material from your father and from your mother, and it contributes to what your face looks like and your body structure looks like and certain, attributes that you have. The spiritual force that animated the sperm cell, your patriclan divinity, whose energy you inherited through that sperm cell, and the spiritual force that animated the mitochondrial DNA that was within the ovum and so forth, that female divinity's energy also impacts the way you operate, your temperament and so forth. We invoke the matriclan and patriclan divinities as part of our ritual process as well. So we're always balancing out our expression. So when we come in contact with one another, we respect the divinity that governs the head of the person, respect their matriclan and patriclan energy and so forth. Our culture is based on that. So when we interact with one another and we know what our function in the world is and how we can blend our functions to get married and have children and build community and so forth, it's all integrated. It's a different approach to life when you know you have a function in the world. Just like every organ in your body has a specific function, we as cells within the great divine body have a specific function. We know what our function is. We're given that as children. Or if you return to ancestral religion as an adult, you find that out. And so then you begin to operate based on what is my function in the world? What do I contribute to our community? What energy complex did I inherit from my patriclan and matriclan ancestresses and ancestors that I've fused together within my being? I fine-tuned that unique expression of energy that I have and the unique talents that I have, and I utilize that to benefit the community, whether I'm a healer or healeress, a builder, a defender, engineer, whatever it is, I'm contributing that unique configuration of energy and inclinations to build the community. We see how that binds with or aligns with someone, of the opposite sex within the proper age range as well. See how our, functions unite, and the culture guides every step of the way. So it's a different approach. Okay. Okay, so another piece that says, so at the beginning of meditation, is it always good to take a deep breath and then chant or provoke Hapi and Merit? Yes, now, so this is what happens. When when we're talking about the course, for example, we're teaching the certification course and people are going out and teaching in schools and places of employment and all of that. We don't teach people ancestral religion. We're teaching the basic fundamental practice of meditation, similar to if you're going out and teaching somebody how to exercise, how to do, specific exercises for their optimal benefit. It's going to end up leading them into ritual practice, but you start off, we don't go teaching them ancestral religion. We teach them meditation, breathing. When they start to calm themselves and go internally, they are unconsciously beginning to attune to their ancestresses and ancestors and the Abosom and so forth. But we don't teach them that. If people want to learn more, of course, we have things set aside separate from the basic course that we're teaching with basic ritual practice. If you go into a women's shelter and you want to teach women meditation so they can calm themselves and be more focused and more disciplined and release some anxiety and diminish depression and so forth, so they can be more focused, so they can get their lives back on track and overcome addictions and different things, teaching basic meditation effectively and quote unquote subconsciously, they are aligning with the divinity that governs them, governs their head. They are aligning subconsciously with their matriclan and patriclan divinities. They are aligning subconsciously with their ancestresses and ancestors who have been communicating with them all along, but they just weren't listening. So when they quiet themselves, they begin to be flooded with these messages of wisdom. Later on, they will be able to identify, these messages that I've been giving weren't just conditionings. These messages very often were messages directly from the ancestresses and ancestors of my spirit genetic blood circle. They will discover that. But when we're teaching the courses, we don't start off teaching them ancestral religion. That's not the purpose of it. We can teach them basic meditation. If they want to learn more about ancestral religion, they can do that outside of, us teaching them a meditation practice at a workplace or a school and so forth. But when we engage the ritual process, we start off, if you're practicing ancestral religion yourself, we start off with the Great Mother and Great Father, Supreme Being, the various Abosom and so forth. Those, if you know who Hapi and Merit are, we include them as part of that ritual prayer. If some people don't know who Hapi and Merit are, they don't know their names in the language, like in the language of the Yoruba people, the language of the Ewe people and so forth, they may not know who they are. But if they invoke the Abosom in total, all of the Abosom, then Hapi and Merit, or all of the Orisha, all of the Vodou, all of the Arusi and so forth, Hapi and Merit are included. As soon as you start breathing, and calming yourself and sending that energy internally, and it begins to circulate through your system, you're already invoking them, without saying their names. But if you know who they are, then yes, you would invoke them as part of that ritual prayer. Let me know if that makes sense. Okay. Next question. So, and in fact, that's Yerase. So, there's also the male and female, and we'll do another separate piece on this. But the term Hetep, which means peace, it also means ritual offerings. But there's a male divinity called Hetep and a female divinity called Hetepet, and they are central to our functioning and creation as well. And even when people mispronounce the term and they start saying Hotep or Hotep niggas, or they try to denigrate the term, they get that foolishness from the whites and offspring and brainwashed Negroes who began to denigrate our language. Hetep is the name of a deity, a male deity, and Hetepet is a female divinity of forces in creation, divine forces in creation, manifestations of divine order. So we'll do a separate thing. Maybe we'll do that one. In fact, we might do that one tomorrow or Sunday, since that's something important. We did a while back. We did a 3-part series on consciousness and Hetep. We talked about the etymology of the word conscious, coming from the root term kan or ka, from ancient Kemet, ka on the masculine side, ka ed on the feminine side, and the relationship of ka and kaet to Hetep and Hetepet and so forth. So we'll probably Saturday or Sunday, we'll get into that. All right. Next question. So this masculinity nonsense being spread that a man is to be all masculine with no emotions, no intuition is wrong. We are to be balanced with our patriclan and matriclan energies to be whole being. Right. So when you see people, for example, let me show that. You hear people talking, and it's very popular now for people to say, this woman is operating within her masculine, or this person is operating within their feminine, which is foolishness. They don't know what they're talking about. You even hear Christians talking that nonsense, and it's no such thing. They associate, nurturing and caring and emotions with, that's feminine energy, and then masculine energy being fire and building and things like that. They really don't know what they're talking about. What they've tried to do is take specific attributes away from actual deities because they want to pretend like the deities don't exist, because they're embracing the fake deities, Jesus, Yeshua, Allah, Yahweh, Brahman, and so forth, who don't exist, never exist of any form or of any race. And we show that in our Kuku Tuntum, how these fictional cartoon characters were manufactured. But they've tried to take these attributes away from actual deities and start talking about masculine and feminine energy, and they're writing books and doing seminars about masculine and feminine energy. Pure nonsense. So let's give an example of that real quick. This is on our Akradin Bosom page on our website. So in the Akan tradition, the Akradin Bosom are the male and female divinities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. So Sunday is the day of the sun, and Monday is the day of the moon, moon day, Monday, and so forth. And Tuesday is the day of Benna and Abena, which are the male and female forces, which the whites and offspring call Mars, but we call Benna and Abena. Mercury is called Aku and Akan, which is Awuku and Akua, the male and female divinity, called Set and Nebuchadnezzar and Ancient Kemet. So we show these correlations. Hold on. In our chart here, what we did here was we showed the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. That, that cycle, you see these different bodies, cyclically every 7 days they move into position and affect the earth in a specific fashion and so forth. The spiritual forces that animate the sun, animate the moon, animate these various planets. We show their names, their popular names in ancient Kemet, the very same divinities and their sacred statuary in our Akan culture. So our Sar in Kemet is Awusi in Akan. Our Set in Kemet is Ajwa in Akan, but she's also called Esi in Akan. Abena is Sekhmet, who's also called Bedat in ancient Kemet. She's called Abena in Akan. Heru Bedet, Bedeti, Herakuti or Heru Bedeti. Sometimes it's winged solar disk and so forth, but he's also shown as the golden falcon. He's called Benna in Akan. He's called Heru Bedat or Heru Bedet in ancient Kemet, but that's Bedat is Benna in Akan. Nebuchadnezzar is called Akua in Akan. Awuku or Kwekwanansi is Set in ancient Kemet. Heru is Yao in Akan. Nekbet is Abba. Wachet is Ya. Het Heru is Afi, but she's also called Cheche in Akan, which is Het Head in ancient Kemet. Amen Min in Akan is Amen Min or Amen Mini in Akan and so forth. So these different divinities governing the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies, and the day of the week that we're born on in Akan tradition is a reflection of who we were assigned to in the spirit realm, in the ancestral realm. So if I was assigned to the divinity Awusi, Alsar in the spirit realm, when I was sent into my mother's womb and born into the world on a Sunday, Awusi Da, Awusi or Alsar made sure that I came out of the womb on his day to let the people in the community know that I was assigned to him pre-incarnation. So I'm born on a Sunday because he made sure I would come out on his day because I was assigned to him. If a woman was born on Abenada Tuesday, Sekhmet or Setchima, Abena made sure that that female child came out of the womb, even if she had a cesarean section, made sure that that child would come out of the womb on Abenada, which is Tuesday, and she would be given the name Abena as an indication that if she was born on Tuesday, then the people would say, oh, she was assigned to, her spirit was assigned to Sekhmet, Abena, when she was in the spirit realm, and therefore she was sent into the world on her day to let us know what took place. That's the first indication when you know what spirit governs the person. So, for example, when we talk about Sechimar or Sekhmet, let's go back real quick. So you see Sechima or Sekhmet. She's a warrioress. She spills blood through warfare. She spills blood through menstruation. She governs menstruation, but she also governs warfare. She's a warrioress, a divine killer, but she's also a healeress. She governs the lymphatic system in the body. And let me just go back real quick just to show you that chart once again. You can see that we also show These 11 divinities, male and female divinities, also govern the 11 major body systems. Within us, 11 major body systems are their shrines within our bodies. So you see Sekhmet governs the lymphatic system. That is a law enforcement structure in the body. You'll see the Akan numbers. That's numerology from 1 to 11 and so forth. Numerology in the true sense. These numbers are associated with the energy of these actual deities. We did a whole 6-week course on Nkane Sem, which is sacred numerology associated with the actual deities, as opposed to the misinformation put forward by Europeans about the nature of these numbers. The numbers are always associated with actual male and female deities and their functions in creation, with their energy complexes. So, Sechima, third born, and so forth. Esa is the number for 3. Sa is also the number for the term for war and so forth. So, the lymphatic system wages war against cancerous cells and bacterial agents and so forth. She's a warrioress in the cosmology. She wages war against the enemy. But she's also a healeress. Your lymphatic system also helps to heal the body and so forth. When she's waging war against the enemy and killing the enemy as a lioness, bloodthirsty, ripping the enemy apart. She's wearing the solar disc on her head and so forth. And let me go back to that article real quick. So you see, she can be shown as a woman, but also the head of a lioness, or sometimes just the full body of the lioness. Solar disc on her head, fire energy, fire spitting cobra on the head and so forth, red fire divinity. You also see the lioness here. So, the pseudo researchers and pseudo spiritualists and so forth will talk about, oh, if she's waging war like that and expending all this fire, then she's in her masculine. That's pure stupidity. There's masculine fire, a masculine expression of fire. There's a feminine expression of fire. There's a masculine expression of water. There's a feminine expression of water. Sechima Sekhmet is a warrioress divinity. She's an expression of the feminine aspect of fire, just like her male counterpart, Heru Bedeti, is an expression of the masculine aspect of fire. And he's shown sometimes as a falcon, but sometimes in the form of a lion with the triple Atef crown. So he's shown as a lion, and she's shown as a lioness. When a lioness is with other lionesses and they're hunting, are they operating in their masculine? And that's because they don't have a man around and they're forced to operate in their masculine. And once they get with a man, then they can submit and they can be in their flowery nature and they don't have to be so masculine and fiery. Pure stupidity. These people have no knowledge whatsoever of masculine and feminine energy. A male has some feminine energy because you have an ovum, part of your DNA is mitochondria and so forth. You have a predominance of the masculine force. A woman has the predominance of the feminine force, but she has some aspect of the masculine as well. The Y chromosomal energy that came from her father that made up part of her body and so forth. And her energy complex. We have matricline and patricline divinities. But there's a balance. There's a predominance of the masculine, predominance of the feminine, and then there's a minority of the masculine and feminine within us and so forth, and all of that balances us out. So, but all these conversations about masculine energy in her masculine, in his feminine, they have no knowledge. If they're not talking about actual deities, then they don't know what they're talking about. And most of these individuals are totally brainwashed with pseudo religion, yet they're trying to talk about what masculine energy is. They're a female, Wachet is a female feminine force of fire. Sekhmet, a force of fire. Anuket, a force of fire. There are many female fire divinities, just like there are many female water divinities. When they're operating in their natural fire, they are not operating in their masculine aspect. That's pure stupidity. So, but yes, but even with meditation itself, when we begin to just instinctively and effectively and unconsciously, when you begin to engage in Susuw, which is a normal ritual practice, as we said, the most dramatic expression of that is going to sleep. When you go internally for 8 hours, rejuvenate yourself, then come out, with a refreshed, focus. When you go into meditation deliberately, 10, 15, 20 minutes, a half an hour, you go internally, you block these other things out, and you realign yourself with the order of creation. You're instinctively realigning yourself with the unique configuration of the matriclan and patriclan energy that combine to make up your unique spirit body, governed by the divinity that governs your head. You're instinctively doing that. Now, when you become more, seasoned within your own culture, then you do it deliberately. It's not just instinctive, you do it deliberately. So, but that in and of itself, just that in and of itself, once you begin the Susuw process, get up in the morning, you purify yourself, cleanse yourself internally and externally, and you sit down and you begin to block things out and focus Susuw to measure the depth of, calculate the capacity of, ponder, reflect upon the self and so forth, and align with order. Then you begin to push all these foolish conditionings out. You start to notice the differences between the thoughts that you have that are conditionings, things that you've learned from this society or misinformed individuals, and the kinds of thoughts and inclinations and ideas that flood your sphere of awareness that are coming from your own Kra, your soul, your divine consciousness, your ancestresses and ancestors. There's a difference between these purified thoughts, intentions, and actions and the conditionings that you've been operating upon. It's no different, as we always say, when you have new parents and they bring their baby home, their infant home and so forth. Initially, when the baby is crying, all you hear is all the cries sound the same. But then you begin to notice the nuanced differences between when the child is crying because they're in pain, crying because they're hungry, crying because they need to be changed, crying because they're sleepy and so forth. You notice the difference. When you engage in Susuw on a consistent basis, you'll notice the difference between when you're having ideas that are based on misguided conditionings that you've held on to for a long time or new ones, or when an ancestral spirit is communicating, when one of your patriclan or matriclan divinity is communicating. They have their own unique ways of communicating with you or planting thoughts, intentions, ideas within you, ancestresses and ancestors, as well as the divinity that governs your head, and you notice the difference. And you align yourself with the thoughts, intentions, and ideas coming from the divinity that governs you and your cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, and the thoughts and ideas and intentions that come from misguided individuals or things that you've, incorporated misguided conditionings. You get rid of those and you operate based on what's pure. And Susuw allows you to go in and make those corrections. So once again, our certification course to become a meditation instructor certified, you can register now. It's a 4-week course. The book Nkwamua Whole Life Journal, as well as the book On the Origin of the Term Yoga, Karakasa, Origin and Nature of the Chakra, and a couple other books that we'll be going over are free downloads included within the course, free downloads from our website. It's on Susuw, on meditation, from a grounded cultural perspective. As we said before, Susuw meditation has been part of our culture for tens of thousands of years, predates anything coming out of India or Asia by thousands of years before they existed in the world, before Asians existed, Hindus existed on Earth. We were already engaged in Susuw. So we come at this from our grounded, cultural, accurate perspective. And, we want to teach people in our community how to utilize this to their best benefit in a basic, fundamental, introductory way. When we look at, once again, if you look at the flyer, and this is what assists people immediately, you'll see the scientific benefits of meditation, even for 5, 10, 15 minutes, initially on a daily basis, enhancing learning outcomes for students, as well as employees and so forth, regulating behavior, overcoming anxiety and depression, rebalancing hormones, lowering blood pressure, reducing stress, regulating weight loss, overcoming addictions, developing discipline, maintaining focus to overcome obstacles to short and long-term goals. So these things are immediately helpful for youth as well as adults in various settings. So you'll be certified to conduct these basic sessions. That certification can be used nationally as well as internationally. Some organizations require or ask you, are you certified to teach meditation? Before we pay you, they may pay you $100, $200 to do a half an hour session and so forth, to come in once a week or a couple of times a week, or maybe just a one-time hit. They may pay you $300. They have money set aside for different kinds of, things. Some people come in, like we said before, for breastfeeding, for mothers. Then that same women's shelter may bring somebody in to teach a yoga class. The following week, they may bring somebody in to teach meditation as a skill that people can, incorporate. Same thing with schools, the same thing with colleges, the same thing with, places of employment. When they have certain seminars on a certain day, they bring people out. They have money in the budget. Typically, when they have budgets like that and they write you in, you give them an invoice, they typically ask for something. Do you have some kind of, certification? You show them the certification, your seal, certification with the seal and so forth. That's all they need. And they're like, okay, we can, pay you. Some people don't ask for a certification, but you need to go through a process where you get accurate information, you can assist the community, and you can, function as an entrepreneur as well. Some people will go to one school per day for like 4 days in a row. They'll set up something where they can teach a session, this school one day, this school the next day, and then 4 or 5 days in a row. And you can generate a couple $100 a day for 4 or 5 days in a row, and you can, benefit yourself economically, but you're also benefiting the community. So it just depends on how you structure it. So, and you, of course, you can share this information. Our course, as we said earlier, is open to Afuraitkait people, African Black people only. We only train our people in our culture to conduct these sessions. So, but you can share it with our people, and if people would like to, and they don't have to have any prerequisite knowledge. This is an introductory. And once again, we already have courses, we've taught 40 different online courses, and we have those in archive for people who want to go deeper into cosmology and so forth. But for basic Susuw, they can just benefit you on a basic level, youth and adults, we have this course, the certification course. If you are not able to attend in person, you can still register, because we record every session, and we always send the recording to all the registrants in a private link with a password and so forth, so you can access it indefinitely whenever you want to, unlimited access and so forth. If you're not able to attend in person, you have questions, you can email us the questions that you would have asked during the live and so forth, so we can answer those, so you can complete your certification at your own pace. Once you complete that, you get the certification and you can still utilize it. So if you're not able to come live, you can still register. Somebody had that, a couple of people had that question. So we talked about that earlier today, and we posted that on YouTube. We just wanted to reiterate that. But once again, Yerase, we thank everybody for tuning in, joining in with us. And Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again. That's it.
Susuw, Meditation Instructor Certification. Susuw is the ancient Akan term for meditation. Susuw originated in our ancestral culture of Afuraka, Afuraitkait, Africa, tens of thousands of years ago. This ancient practice has been utilized to regulate physical, emotional, and mental balance for millennia in varied expressions wherever our people have migrated in the world. The scientific benefits of meditation for youth and adults have been well documented, enhancing learning outcomes, regulating behavior, overcoming anxiety and depression, rebalancing hormones, lowering blood pressure, reducing stress, regulating weight loss, overcoming addictions, developing discipline, maintaining focus to overcome obstacles to short and long-term goals. Our meditation instructor certification is for individuals, independent contractors, educators, homeschoolers, human services professionals, behavioral health professionals, and others. As a certified instructor, you are qualified to contract with independent schools, charter schools, cultural organizations, corporate entities, women's and family shelters, community centers, colleges, and more to conduct meditation sessions on a daily, weekly, or periodic basis. Our instruction is rooted in our Nkwamua whole life wellness model.